Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everyone hear me good? All right. Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here on tonight. I am Rodney D. I am your state representative for House District 27. That is Halifax, Northampton, and Warren counties. And on behalf of my office, myself, and my legislative assistant, Ms. Loria, thank you so much for all of your help tonight, ma'am, and in general. I'd like to welcome you to this town hall here in Warren County. A little bit about the town halls that I've had since I've been elected. Since I have campaigned. I've had two town halls in Halifax County, 3 overall. This is my 3rd one. I had a town hall in Halifax County at Halifax Community College in Weldon in February of 2024. That's when I was running for office. I had a town hall in January of this year prior to the legislature convening on January the 29th. We convened on the 29th. That town hall was on the 27th. So prior to this town hall, I've only had 2. That was a town hall, both of those town halls were in Halifax County. This is my first, but will not be my last in Warren. I've not had any in Northampton yet, so they're going to be jealous of y'all in Halifax. All right, that's a joke. Y'all were supposed to laugh. I want to recognize any past or present elected officials who are in the House. If you all would please stand, and thank you all for coming out tonight as well. Mayor Gardner, Chair Dunlap, former Chair Pierce. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. So, I believe that it is important to be accountable to voters, right? Whether you're on this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle. I am the representative for everyone who is a constituent in House District 27. And in doing that, I think that it's important to hold town halls, to share the information that I know in terms of what's going on in Raleigh, to answer any questions that you might have, or to just listen to any concerns that you might have. That's very important to me, because I can't do my job effectively if I don't meet the people where they are. Everybody can't get to Raleigh, right? Some people don't have good internet where they live, so they may not be able to email you. They may not be able to call you. But if you come to where they are, if you come to their community, they just might be able to get out to come see what you're talking about. So again, I want to thank all of you for coming out here tonight. Thank you so much. And I want to thank the Warrenist, Ms. Crystal, for agreeing to record for me tonight, because I couldn't find anyone on my team to record for me. So thank you again, Ms. Crystal. All right, so our purpose tonight is to inform you about key legislation from the 25-26 General Assembly session and its impact here on Warren County. I'm going to provide highlights of significant bills, budget changes, and policy shifts. Just so you know, while the Senate version of the budget was released last month, the House version, in terms of the full House version of the budget, was just released earlier this afternoon, around 3:30, so about 3 hours ago. So some of the stuff you're going to see in this presentation is from what we had available to us on last week. I sit on the General Government Appropriations Committee, and I sit on the Full Appropriations Committee. I don't know how I pulled that one off. But what you're going to see are highlights from the different appropriations committees that I thought were relevant. Of course, I can't put them all up there, but that I thought were relevant and that will be of interest to you. Education, I know we got school board members as well as Dr. MD in the house tonight, so put some of that up there. Health-related stuff, general government stuff. So that's what I have in terms of the budget. But let me just go ahead and get to what you all are here for tonight. This picture right here was taken at the Celebrating Warren County event a couple weeks ago. All right, one of the bills that I've heard a lot about is Senate Bill 220. All right, this aims to strengthen private property rights by increasing penalties for hunting, fishing, or trapping on posted and unposted land without written permission. Before y'all say anything, Representative Pierce does not have a quote-unquote position on any of the legislation that is before him, that is before this body, okay? My whole thing is I want to study both sides of the issue, the pros and cons, not make a quick determination or anything like that. But I will say this. When my constituents in my district reach out, so when you get in contact with us and you say, Mr. Pierce, Representative Pierce, Ms. Loria, I don't think this is a good idea because of this, this, and that, it definitely catches my ear more so than a lobbyist trying to get into my office to talk to me, right? Because you're not paid to share your opinion. You're not paid to advocate a position. They are. So I would much rather hear from you or hear from the elected officials that represent you here in this jurisdiction than hear from a lobbyist that's paid to try to influence my vote. Now, supporters of this bill, including the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, argue that it balances landowner rights with equitable access for hunters and anglers. They say that over 80% of the land in North Carolina is privately owned, and this will help with conservation efforts. Outdoor recreationalists express concern that the bill could restrict access to public waterways, particularly for activities like kayaking and fishing. I've heard from people on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of this issue. I've heard from hunting clubs, I've heard from hunters, I've heard from people who own property that people hunt on or been hunting on for years, who don't care. I've heard from people say, hey man, we already got a way of letting people know that they aren't allowed to hunt on our property. Why do y'all always up there in Raleigh try to make a problem out of something that's already kind of been handled? And I just say, okay, I'm new. My first term, it's not my bill. But this is one of the bills that has been brought to my attention. Ms. Laurie, if you could do me one favor, please. Could you find out where that bill is?
That bill passed the Senate and it's been referred to rules of
Okay. All right. So that bill already passed the Senate, Senate Bill 220. It's been referred to the House Rules Committee. Now, the interesting thing about rules, the Rules Committee and the Rules Committee chair, that's the most powerful committee and the most powerful chair in either chamber of the General Assembly, whether you're talking about Senate or House. Because before a bill can go to the floor to be voted on by House or Senate members, it has to get through rules. All right? But they also can send your bill to rules to let it what? Die. Right? So it's a two-edged sword, so to speak. If your bill goes to rules, like you introduce it initially and they immediately send it to rules, it's probably dead. I've been told nothing is truly dead up there, but it's probably dead. Would you say nope? But this bill did pass the Senate. I think it passed the Senate last month, and it's currently in the Rules Committee of the House. So that might mean that it's going to eventually make it to the floor for a vote. The next bill is Senate Bill 493. This bill amends statutes related to land use, planning, and zoning, including those governing local government, school buildings, and property. I will advise you that I did hear from the town of Warrenton on this issue. All right? Got an email from Mr. Davey. I know Mr. Mayor is here tonight. And if I can just speak plainly, they're not feeling it. They're not feeling it. They are not in favor of this. Mr. Representative Pierce, we urge you to not vote in favor of this legislation, because what it's going to do is take away a city or a township's authority to expand its ETJ or extraterritorial jurisdiction beyond the territory that it was already exercising. So basically you have a bill that is limiting the power or reducing the power of a local government. And one of the things that I don't understand or I don't like is when we in Raleigh try to impose on the affairs of local government, whether that's a township, a municipality, county commissioners, boards of education, etc. You got a lot of bills out there, now you're making boards of education partisan, when it used to be nonpartisan, just like what else used to be nonpartisan? Judges. Now judicial races are partisan, right? But that's what that bill would do. And I see it's cut off there at the bottom, but where's that bill at, Ms. Lloyd? Same thing as the last one. I had it written down here. If you look, y'all on the front row can see it, but it kind of got cut off. But that's where the position of the bill now, where it was where I wrote it. But that also passed the Senate. Excuse me. That also passed the Senate and is also in House rules. So again, that might be something that you see come to the floor of the House for a vote. Senate Bill 729. This is a big one. And I know we got some pro-renewable or clean energy people here tonight. This bill aims to protect agricultural land from environmental contamination and to ensure that farmland remains available for future agricultural use. It includes provisions related to property tax exemptions for agricultural land and addresses issues concerning hazardous substances and utility infrastructure on farmland. Agribusiness is our #1 industry here in North Carolina. Over $110 billion in 2024 alone. But the main thing that I've heard a lot about is this tax exclusion, which would take away the exemption that solar farms or solar equipment get. And again, I've heard from people on both sides. The North Carolina Association of County Commissioners is for this bill because they say we have lost property tax revenue. Not to say there aren't getting any, but they're saying we could get more if not for this exclusion. And I know, according to the documents that we have at the office, Warren County has lost $988,000. Halifax and Northampton have both lost over $1 million. The flip side of this is that all types of businesses get certain types of tax exclusions. So the solar industry or the renewable energy or clean energy industry is saying, well, why are you picking on us? What is it about us that's making you take this position? All right? That bill has not been voted on in the House yet. It was re-referred to the House Committee on Energy and Public Utilities. It does have support in the House. Usually if a bill is introduced by a Republican in the House, I'd say probably about 50% of the time it's going to pass. Because if it makes it to the floor for a vote, that means that it's a priority. And I'm using the partisan edge because Republicans currently have a supermajority in the state Senate. There are 50 state senators, they have 30. You got to have 3/5 for a supermajority. In the House, they are only 1 seat short of a supermajority. They have 71 seats, Democrats have 49. All right? House Bill 765. Now this bill is actually supposed to address our state's housing shortage by implementing several changes to local development regulations. Now, from my research, one of the things that I learned was that in each county in House District 27, that's Halifax, Northampton, and Warren, I believe that at least 30% or close to a third of the homeowners in each of these counties is what's called cost burdened. And what that means is that they spend at least 30% of their income on housing alone. So that is something that definitely gets your attention. But this would allow developers and property owners to sue local government officials for damages resulting from land use decisions. It would limit a local government's ability to regulate building design, parking requirements, and the creation of historic districts. It would mandate that all land use decisions be made within 104 days of an application. Otherwise, the development is automatically approved. It will require cities with populations over 125,000, really doesn't apply here to us, to allow tiny homes and at least one accessory dwelling unit per single family home. And it permits the construction of at least 4 homes per acre in residential zones statewide. Again, another bill that's seeking to try to limit the authority or the power of local governments and allows people to sue local government officials for land use decisions. There are some who will say that's a little extreme. And then there are others who will say, no, that's fine. And that was re-referred to the House Finance Committee. So that has not been voted on in the House. And this is the last of these bills that have been brought to our attention over the past several weeks. We've received phone calls and emails about. This is House Bill 926. This is basically a bill about regulatory framework in the state in terms of education, health, and property rights. Now, for education, for the board members and our Madam Superintendent who's here, this would allow physical therapists to evaluate and clear student athletes for participation in sports activities following head injuries, namely concussions. It would eliminate dual licensure requirements for audiologists and removes reflexologists from oversight by the State Board of Massage and Bodywork Therapy. It proposes a constitutional amendment to prohibit the taking of public property, private property, through eminent domain unless it is for public use. And that also was referred to House rules. So, again, that's something that might come up for a vote, or they might have sent it to rules to do what? For it to die. Now, I'm going to share some of the bills with you that I've introduced in this legislative session. I have been a primary sponsor on 19 bills. You get 4 primary sponsors on a bill. Your primary sponsors can be all from the same political party. They can be from different political parties, whatever you like. It probably will have a better chance of passing the House if it's what? 2-2, right? 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. That's not always the case, but you get 4 primary sponsors on a bill, and then everyone else is what's called a what? Co-sponsor. All right, out of the 19 bills that I have been a primary sponsor on, I was first primary on 10 of them. If you're first primary on a bill, what that mainly means is that the bill is your bill or was your idea. Sometimes you're first primary on a bill because you know somebody else asked you to do it because they feel you have the better relationship with certain people to get the bill passed or to get it heard in committee. So I'm just going to highlight a few of these. All right, this is taken from the powwow, but this is the bill that I'm probably the most proud of introducing. Didn't go anywhere. Nevertheless, the most proud of introducing House Bill 28. This would create a statewide program to focus on prostate cancer prevention and early detection and education in the Department of Health and Human Services. There is a breast and cervical cancer control program in DHHS. Now, we have breast cancer survivors in the legislature who are men, okay? But if it's breast and cervical cancer specific, it primarily is geared towards who? Women. There was nothing geared towards men. And not to be sexist or anything, ladies, but I just didn't think that was right. Particularly, you know, men catch cancer too. The most common form of cancer in North Carolina, regardless of your race, your age, where you live, how much money you make, if you are a man, the most common form of cancer in North Carolina amongst us is prostate cancer. And it will basically cost the same amount of money as the breast and cervical cancer control program. It would give men who were uninsured or underinsured free or low-cost PSA screenings. It would cost about $4 million over the biennium, which is 2 fiscal years. And it immediately got sent to rules. But that's probably the bill that I'm the most proud of because I felt like this will be an easy slam dunk because it's about saving what? Lives. And I had 3 Republican primary sponsors along with myself on it. So don't let it be said I don't know how to work across the aisle. Because my thing is this, when it comes to partisanship, we already know we're going to disagree on certain things. That's a given. But when we can find that common ground, when we can find a consensus or reach a consensus on something that makes sense, that's not controversial, let's do it. And 2 of those Republican primary sponsors, guess what? They were doctors, physicians, the only 2 in the entire state legislature. Timothy Reeder out of Pitt County and Grant Campbell out of Cabarrus. Dr. Reeder's an emergency room physician. Dr. Campbell's an OBGYN. They jumped on it. So I was like, yeah, I know it's going to go through now. As you can see, it got referred to the House Rules Committee. House Bill 158, we hear a lot about school calendar flexibility, and this bill would have given school calendar flexibility to Halifax County schools, Warren County schools, Weldon City schools, and the Roanoke Rapids Graded School District, so that those people would have the authority to create a calendar that would better meet the needs of their students and their communities. Northampton decided to not be a part of it. And again, that was referred to the House Rules Committee. There was a bill passed for school calendar flexibility in the House, but it hasn't passed the Senate yet. The next one, House Bill 325. As most of you all in here know, if you don't, I am a teacher. All right? I taught middle school social studies for 9 years, taught in Halifax County schools, Nash, as well as Northampton, won a few awards. I was pretty good. But this bill right here would establish a pilot program to allow students to visit the legislative building to learn about the legislative process, civic engagement, basically to learn how government is supposed to work. Every day I'm pulling up to work at the General Assembly, I see school groups, but I don't see none I recognize from my neck of the woods. We're all Tier 1 here. Most of our schools are Title I in each district, in each county. So I'm looking at it like, what can I do to try to help kids from my area get up here to Raleigh? Because once they get here and they take that legislative tour, building tour, they can go wherever they want after that. They can go to Frankie's, the fun part. They can go to the governor's mansion. They can go to another museum. As long as I can get them here. That was my main reasoning behind this. But it was going to give you the opportunity as a public school, that's a traditional public school or a charter, to apply for a $2,000 grant. And the money could only be used towards a field trip to this area, to Raleigh. That was referred to House Appropriations. Another education bill. Establish a statewide program for universal screening of middle school students to identify those who are academically or intellectually gifted, AIG. I have 3 children. 2 of them have been identified as AIG. Baby girl hasn't been screened. Now, I'm in a position, her mother and I are in a position, where we can get her screened, right? We know people, we have the connections, we have the income to be able to do that, but everybody ain't got that, right? So I said, okay, well, the kids who don't get screened in elementary school, or the kids who don't have the best living situation or the best home stability at that time, so they can't really focus and be the best student they can be, let's give them another opportunity to qualify for AIG. Let's give them another test in 6th grade. That was the, that was the rationale behind that. Again, referred to rules. This is a picture of me at the Warren County Democratic Party convention a few weeks ago. This was a big one that I'm very proud of as well. This one would have given a pay increase of 15% to members of the North Carolina Forest Service. When it comes to Helene recovery, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to all of these wildfires we've been seeing throughout North Carolina, these people right here are very, very, very important. They are trained at a cost, I think, of about $30,000 per year. All of these certifications and things that they have to get. And then when they're done, after those 3 or 4 years, guess what? They go to work for another state agency making twice what they were making as a Forest Service employee. They work weekends. They're on call all weekend long. They're only making like $2 and some change per hour over the weekend. And when they're on call. And Warren County should be proud because Mr. Jim Short, who was the Warren County Ranger, was State Employee of the Year for the North Carolina Forest Service, if I'm not mistaken. But it would have been a 7.5% increase for each year of the biennium. And I got a lot of Forest Service workers who were very grateful because they said, we feel like somebody sees us and appreciates what we do. Because a lot of people, Representative Pierce, don't realize what we do. I believe their starting salary is actually lower than a teacher's starting salary, or is around the same range. Again, referred to rules. All right, Pastor Jones is here. I know I asked him to come and do an invocation, and I got to talking and forgot all about it. I'm sorry, sir. All right? But one of the soft spots I think we all have is for people with disabilities, particularly children with disabilities. And I know this word right here has become kind of synonymous sometimes with things that are negative, but an inclusive playground is a playground where children with disabilities can play on the equipment just as well as a child who does not have disabilities. And so this would create a program where a municipality, a school district would get about $100,000. So they could apply for about $100,000 so that they could build or they could adapt already existing playgrounds to make them suitable for children with disabilities. And that got referred to House rules as well. So I hope you can see that these bills that I'm introducing are common sense, not controversial. They have bipartisan support. But for whatever reason, maybe it's because I'm in the minority party, maybe it's because I'm in my first term, a lot of them have been referred to rules. Now this bill right here, the Forest Service bill, let me go back to this one. I literally asked my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who had state or national forest in their districts to join me. I only heard back from one. He was like, I'm not interested at this time. And I'm just sitting there kind of scratching my head like, okay. So I ended up having to get 3 fellow Democrats on it with me. The Inclusive Playground bill actually was myself and another Democrat who has children with special needs, another a Republican who has worked in public education, and another Republican who has children with special needs. So again, bipartisan, common sense, not controversial. This is what happens in Raleigh, though. Now, I know this is very wordy right here, and everybody can't see it, but last week, the appropriation subcommittees of the House met for our part of the budget. As I was telling you, I sit on general government appropriations. So we didn't get what our actual part of the budget was until that morning. So imagine you have this thick document you got to read through, right? So you can make the best decision, so you can say, okay, we need to try to save this, we need to try to cut this. You walk into the meeting, and the first time you see it, boom, it's that morning. You don't even get 24 hours to review it beforehand. And then you get a rule sheet that tells you you can't take any money from the state capital and infrastructure fund. You can't take any money from any of the statewide reserves. You can't take any money from the lottery. Obviously you can't take any money from disaster relief. But all of those funds, all of those reserves that you can dip in prior to this fiscal year, all of a sudden you can't go into them anymore. That's what they told us. That was what was on paper. All right? So what we have the opportunity to do now that we have these documents is offer what's called amendments. Okay, if Ms. Loria is running a program that costs $10,000, and Madam Chair has a program she wants me to fund that costs $5,000. As her representative, I offer the amendment to take $5,000 from her and give her the $5,000. Y'all said, that ain't right, Rodney. But guess what? That's what they told us we had to do. Because you can't dip into those other funds. You're going to have to rob Peter to do what? Pay Paul. So that means that you might end up cutting something or going into the funding for something that's pretty popular with a certain group of people. So when they get wind or they get word, oh, you trying to go into our money now. Let's shoot him an email. Let's make a phone call to his office. Let's just walk into his office. Let's just come by there. Pay him a visit. Because now he's messing with our what? Money. All right? They said money can only be adjusted among items within the same committee section and not cause a change in another area committee appropriation. So I can't take money from education and try to put it in the general government. It's got to come out of general government. If you want to make a change in education, it's got to come out of the money that's been appropriated for education. Can't come out of nowhere else, y'all. Imagine that. So we're in the meeting. General government is five Republicans, 3 Democrats, because as I said, Republicans have the majority. And under the Department of Administration, the Office of Historically Underutilized Businesses, the HUB office, an office that helps people who are racial minorities, women, as well as people with disabilities who own businesses, get state government contracts for their business. That's about $884,000 in a fiscal year. They were eliminating that office. I said, well, wait a minute, I got people who fit those demographics who own businesses in my district. Matter of fact, throughout the entire state, we need to try to save this. It's not even $1 million. So I said to fiscal research, I said, well, what can we get the money from? They said, we suggest you take it from the Wake Forest University Institute for Regenerative Medicine. I said, well, what the heck do they do? She said, they make organs for medical research. I was like, ooh, that might not be popular. She said, they get $10 million a year, Representative Pierce. How long have they been getting it? Since 2007. Well, shoot, they ain't gonna miss $884,000. So I make the amendment, got voted down. One of my fellow Democrats, she said, Rep. Pierce, I can't vote for it. I said, why? She said, because I represent Forsyth. I represent Forsyth County. I can't vote for it. But she was nice enough to take me outside of the conference room, got me on the phone with the people from Wake Forest who actually run the school. Who actually run that institute, so I could talk to them. The gentleman said, sir, I understand your position. I said, and I understand yours. We just agree to disagree. A non-recurring reduction cannot be made to fund a recurring addition. Non-recurring means you just get the money for that fiscal year alone, and that's it. Recurring means you continue to get it fiscal year after fiscal year. They were saying you can't take money that's non-recurring because we're only doing it for one fiscal year to fund something that you want to have recurring funding. They said you cannot introduce an amendment that increases overall spending in the area committee. Budgets are not allowed. So I said, well, why don't we, increase our education spending? I'm a teacher. Nope, can't do it. You cannot include fees or other finance-related matters. You cannot include any Helene-related items. That's going to be in a separate bill. Here's the one. You cannot reduce or eliminate vacant positions in agency budgets beyond those already included in the committee report. I just told you they were trying to eliminate the HUB office, right? That's 12 full-time employees, or FTE, as we say. Hundreds of jobs throughout the state are being slashed or cut in the name of efficiency, right? Because those positions have been vacant for so long. Our position is, well, if we paid people what they were actually worth, maybe those positions would be filled. But they're talking about cutting 400 correctional officer positions. They're talking about eliminating the office of, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Lawyer, from the Department of Environmental Quality, the Office of Environmental Education, and the Office of Environmental Justice. Hello. Right? That's like a slap in the face to me, because that's a slap in the face to the legacy of this county. So you're just sitting there like, wow. They're talking about eliminating the Minority Male Success Initiative. That's a program at community colleges that helps young minority males graduate and get good job placement. I was the beneficiary of a program like that when I went to Halifax Community College. And even though it says minority, quote unquote, male success initiative, they didn't turn anybody away, whether you were a racial minority or not. Any young man or any man that needed assistance finishing college, getting a nice suit to wear for a job interview, they helped you regardless. So you can't always go by what you see on paper when it comes to stuff like that. But those are just some of the rules we were given when we got to these Appropriations Committee meetings. And guess what? On tomorrow, when I'm in that full Appropriations Committee meeting, the same rules apply. Same rules apply. And these are just some of the items that I was talking about that are in the budget that we saw on last week. The House budget was released this afternoon about 3:30. So like I said, I'm going to just share with you some of the highlights I thought would be of interest. Now, these are the things that are being proposed. Doesn't mean they will necessarily happen, but they're being proposed. All right? Future Teachers of North Carolina program. That's basically a program that if you're a high school student and you're interested in teaching, it helps you get into school in terms of helping, guiding you, telling you what you need to take in high school, what you need to take in college to become a teacher. They're talking about getting rid of that program. Don't we got a teacher shortage? Last I checked, Madam Chair. Right?
Everybody does.
Right, exactly. They're talking about cutting $9.5 million from the UNC Campus Scholarship Program. These are some of the schools that are affected, that would be affected if you cut that money. And I got my uncle who helped raise me back there. They coming after Winston-Salem State money, Kurt. And A&T, Faye. ECSU, any Vikings in the house? Elizabeth City State. North Carolina Central, any Eagles in the house? Okay, Fayetteville State, Broncos, and UNCP, UNC Pembroke. That's the state's only historically Indian serving institution. What they call them were historically minority HMSIs, historically minority serving institutions. These 5 HBCUs and UNCP. And out of all of those schools, if I remember correctly, ECSU gets the most money. They get like $1.4 million. And I think that's the closest one to us in terms of the schools that are affected. Now, what they would like to do also, I don't know why I have no here, they want to reinstate, the House wants to reinstate the sales tax holiday in August. Remember when you could go school shopping and you got that sales tax break that weekend prior to school starting? The House wants to bring that back. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the Speaker of the House is a school board attorney, right, Ms. Lori? They want to increase reimbursement rates for child care subsidies to try to address the child care crisis. They want to set aside $2.5 million for CDL programs. That's a good thing. I talked about eliminating the offices of environmental education and environmental justice at DEQ. They want to get rid of the Office of Health Equity in the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, I heard this morning in a meeting, now they're kind of changing their mind on that. They want to just rename it. Give it a different name because it's got that word in it, that buzzword. But, they also wanted to the Senate wanted to get rid of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission. If you were falsely accused of a crime, these people would help you prove your innocence. I think the House put it back in the budget, but renamed it. So some of these things that they're talking about eliminating because they have those buzzwords in it, they might actually keep in the long run and just rename. It's going to require school districts to develop policies limiting the use of cell phones by students in class. Now, most school districts already have a cell phone policy, right? But if I'm not mistaken, Virginia did this and South Carolina did it. Our neighbors to the south and the north. So it kind of put us in a pickle where we had to decide to do something. They also want to require school districts to post online the salaries of their central office employees. Superintendents, directors, people like that. They want to post online what you're making. They want to prohibit schools from denying students the regular school meal if they have too much debt in their meal account. That's not bad. They want to require elementary schools to begin providing visual arts and performing arts courses to all students. I think it's only going to be maybe one day out of the school week that that student would have that class. It's going to increase funding by $10 million for special education students. That's something that's been talked about a lot because I think the cap is 13%. And of course, we have school districts in this district as well as throughout the state where it's over 13% in terms of the students that they serve in special education. Last one is they want to provide $10 million to train middle school teachers on the science of reading. That's something that they've been using in elementary school to try to bring up reading scores, which have actually improved somewhat. So I didn't think that was a bad idea either. I didn't want it to all be negative stuff. I wanted to show some positives as well. And here is my contact information as well as Ms. Lauria's. It's basically our first name, dot, our last name, at ncleg.gov. Or you can call us at 919-733-5662. That's how you can get in contact with us. And that is about it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time, and now we will take questions from the audience. I know y'all got some questions now. Mayor Gardner. Yes, sir.
I believe the governor signed into law today, House Bill
Thank you.
74, which in that bill removes $10 million from the city of Oxford that is going
Yes, sir.
to the regional water treatment plant new construction.
That's co-owned by Warren County.
How is that going to affect Warren County, and how can we work together to try to get that money back?
Go ahead.
Today, the governor signed into law House Bill 74, which removed $10 million that had already been previously allocated to the city of Oxford for use in the new construction at the regional water treatment plant on Tar Lake.
That's also used by Warren County.
There's Warren County utilizes that as a partner in that, particularly in that new construction project. My question was, how can we partner with representatives to try to help Oxford get that money back so it won't adversely affect Warren County's part of what we're going to owe for work that's already ongoing?
Great question, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. I will tell you this, Mr. Brian Kahn, who represents Vance County as well as Granville County in the legislature, is a Democrat, first termer like me, so that's my people. But Brian told me about this bill months ago when it first started getting proposed. He's like, man, they're going to take money from us. They're going to take money from us. So I read up on the bill, found out what it did. Then about a week ago, I read the story where Speaker Hall said, well, they haven't spent the money yet. That's why we're taking it. And the city of Oxford was saying, well, that's not quite right. We still have, you can't just expect someone to build it within a few months. Something like that is going to take time. But what it is that the city goes ahead, the way I understand it, the city goes ahead and pays the money to whoever the contractor is, and then they get reimbursed from DEQ. There's three different things. There's a appropriation, there's an allocation, and then there's distribution. Appropriation is when the bill is passed or the law is passed. Allocation is when you get notified that you're going to get the money. Distributed is when it hits your bank account. From what I was told by Brian, Mr. Mayor, just last week, they got the money. They got the $10 million, and they put it in the bank. How they pulled that off, I don't know. And I don't know if I don't think he has any reason to lie to me about something like that. I don't know how they did it, but he assured me that they have the money and that they're going to move forward with the project. So we might be in a good spot. But to answer your question, work with your representatives, local officials, come to Raleigh. Like you said, you came to my office and I wasn't there, and meet with the people who are the chairs of these committees that bill is going to go through. Arrange meetings with them, talk to them, let them know how it's going to hurt your jurisdiction. in addition to meeting with your state representatives or whoever represents you in the state Senate, as well as the state House. Send those emails, make those phone calls, hit up their, yes ma'am, hit up their legislative assistants.
There was an amendment that
Hold on, y'all, I'm sorry.
extended the timeline for certain directed grants to non-state entities. In other words, they added an amendment to the initial bill that saved those dollars, basically,
Okay.
that protected those dollars that were allocated in the 2022-23 budget. And so initially, it was voted on.
And I voted against it every time because I knew it was taking money from Warren County.
Made after it went to the House, there was an amendment,
Mhm.
and so it was
Okay.
saved, basically.
All right, good deal.
It's corrected.
But,
Not just for Granville, but for any.
right, but I know House Democrats were pretty unified in voting against that because we knew it was taking money from somebody, basically taking money from a local jurisdiction, money that had already been promised to them, right, for what they were going to do, especially here in the eastern North Carolina, where we have a major infrastructure need and can't risk, getting those funds taken from us that are supposed to help us do things. But thank you for your question, sir. I hope that answered it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Madam Congresswoman. I still call you that.
There's been, is this on?
Yes, ma'am. You probably have to hold it up a
There's
little
been
bit.
a lot of discussion about Medicaid.
Yes, ma'am.
There's Medicaid and there's Medicaid expansion.
Mm-hmm.
How has the state proposed
Mm-hmm.
to respond to the reduction of that?
Mhm.
Are you making any effort at all?
Well, I did.
By the
Go ahead.
way,
I'm sorry.
There are more than 2 million people
Mm-hmm.
that's on Medicaid,
Right.
There's an additional 600,000.
Right. With the expansion. Yes, ma'am.
So what is the General Assembly preparing to meet
Mhm.
the need of that? Or just ignoring it or just waiting for it?
No, I don't. I can only speak for the Democratic side. I haven't seen anything per se from the Republican side. Not to say they haven't done anything.
You on appropriation? You haven't seen anything in the budget?
No. Well, I mean, we don't really get that one until tomorrow morning. That's when we'll see the full the one that came out this afternoon. I was on a bill with some more Democrats where we were trying to address that because I can't remember the specifics, but it's like if it dips below 90% in North Carolina, then it's going to automatically be triggered and those people will be, taken off of Medicaid in terms of the expansion. But I did read an interview this morning and trying to prepare for the night because I knew somebody was going to ask me about Medicaid. The $880 billion cuts that they're seeking in the big, beautiful bill, from what I understood from the person who was being interviewed, who was a North Carolina Medicaid leader in the Department of Health and Human Services, any cuts in Medicaid would not be felt in North Carolina until 2029. But that doesn't make it any better. But that was the takeaway from it because my whole thing was, how is this going to affect people who are on it if that bill passes at the federal level?
Well, how can you assume that any cut they make in 2025 is not going to affect you in 2029?
That's the way the legislation was being written, right, from what I understand.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am.
The proposed cut for SNAP, also
Mhm.
same question.
Oh, boy. Again, I have not seen anything as of yet, ma'am. No.
Let me suppose that you look at that.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
other one is with the dismantling of the Department of Education,
Mm-hmm.
that's all Title I, all Eastern North Carolina.
Yes, ma'am.
And most of the teachers here in Warren County are Title I people.
That's right.
What does the state propose for that?
Well, the way that I understand it is that the Department of Ed would likely give block grants. And instead of probably giving those block grants to DPI, they probably would prefer to give those block grants to the districts themselves or perhaps through DPI. So that money would still, the federal money, yes ma'am. So that money would still be available. They're not going to get rid of Title I, at least in the first, I think it's called the skinny budget that was released by the White House. They're not getting rid of Title I at all or cutting it or anything like that to my knowledge, but it would be in the form of a block grant either given to the DPI or given to respective school districts.
Final question.
Yes, ma'am.
How about the,
You good.
the college funds that students go in, college funds,
You talking about the student loan debt?
student loan? Pell Grant.
Pell grants? There are going to probably be some cuts at the state level. I mean, they're trying to cut that program that was giving money to, all the kids who would go to those HBCUs and UNCP. So I anticipate cuts. It seems like anything that's going to be used to empower people who come from vulnerable populations or vulnerable communities is being cut. Anything that was helping those people, get to their part of the American dream, quote unquote, is being cut. So I would anticipate some type of cuts in that. And again, those of us who are trying to stop it, we got to figure out a way to rob Peter to pay Paul, because we can't dip into anything else.
I recently.
Madam Chair. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm so glad you came tonight.
Thank you.
I recently attended the S-Line regional meeting with potential rail stopping in
Yes, ma'am.
the area. And we were recommended to refer our local minority businesses to the DOT minority office.
Right.
For them to be registered
Right.
and prepared to bid and partner with larger agencies
Right.
bidding on contracts. So how is that gonna happen if the hub is closed?
I mean, it can still happen. The way they talk is, that type of, if they're cutting something, that responsibility will likely be shifted to someone else. My thing is, if you already have people designated or designed to handle that, let them continue to handle it. And then don't take people's jobs from them, because you don't know if they're going to be able to rebound somewhere within the same department. But from what I understand, by cutting that office or by cutting any type of office, they're not always just looking to cut them outright. Sometimes they're looking to move that responsibility to something that also still exists. So that would be my answer to that.
And with the school system, the county funds our local school to a certain extent, but that money follows the student, and we have several competing schools now. So
Yes.
how is that shortage going to be handled? Is
The
there
shortage?
Yeah, since the money is following the student.
Okay.
The system will lose out on funding. So are there any suggestions, anything that's going on in your office that we can take advantage of?
Dr. MD has spoken with me, I want to say 2 or 3 times in the past several weeks about that low wealth supplemental funding, about how the formula is not right. So that's what we're going to look into in my office in terms of trying to get that formula changed so that Warren County can get a cut. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Hold on, let me bring you the mic. Yes, ma'am.
I heard at the
Oh, hey,
last-
Mrs. Espinosa, I'm sorry. I ain't
I
recognize
heard
you.
at the last county commission meeting that there's some legislation coming down the line
Mm-hmm.
that allows the federal and state to allow a county next to you to acquire your land. And I didn't get the whole thing. I couldn't get the number to look it up in advance, but I figured since you're here, you might have heard of it. It was like a legislation 728 or some,
Did we already talk about that tonight?
was,
I think did we already talk about that tonight, Ms. Lori? Is that the bill? You said it was 7.
I think it's 7, I'm not sure, but it allowed another county to be able to come into your county and acquire your land, really without consulting the people that live there,
Something like eminent domain.
something like that, yeah.
I think we already talked about that bill, if it's the bill that I think it is. Give me just a moment, please. What was that bill number? 729? No. 765. Is that the one? That's the one. It was one about eminent domain. I'm trying to remember. 926. Mrs. Espinosa, there were a lot of bills we talked about earlier about land, so I don't know exactly which one you're referring to specifically, but none of those bills have become law yet. They may have passed one chamber, like they may have passed the Senate and now they're in the House, or they may have passed the House and they're in the Senate, but none of those bills that I talked about tonight, it was like 5 that I highlighted that people have been bringing to our attention over the past several weeks. None of those bills have become law yet. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? Madam Chair?
Thank you.
You're doing your job just like me. It's okay.
How effective is citizen involvement, people coming down and visiting representatives? And we know that you are out fighting for us, but there are others that we could visit, so.
You're talking about like just in general?
Right. It's proper for citizens to just go and visit legislators that do not represent them, but can be influenced.
Definitely.
Okay.
Because the chairs of those committees, I'm a Democrat, obviously, right, representing this area, but we only have one Democrat who's a chair of a committee in the House, and he's a co-chair, and that's Representative Willingham out of District 23, that's Burt T. Martin in Edgecombe County. So the chairs are the ones who get to decide whether or not your bill is going to be heard in committee. I had a bill that I introduced about American Indian hunting and fishing rights. What that bill would have done, again, this was a bill that had 3 Republican primary sponsors. What that bill would have done is if you were a member of a federally recognized tribe or a state recognized tribe here in North Carolina, and you had your tribal ID, you would be exempt from having to get a license to hunt, fish, or trap in the state, as well as down there at the coast. Because the way we looked at it was, these people were hunting and fishing and trapping way before there was any concept of having a license to do it, right? And from what I was told, again, by one of the people who was a primary sponsor on the bill with me, was that there was a group that killed the bill in committee. I literally was in the committee meeting. I'm sitting back here against the wall. The chair is conducting a meeting. They called a bill number. They say, "What's your pleasure?" And one of the gentlemen said, "I move that we table the bill." Then the next bill number came up. "What's your pleasure?" "I move that we table the bill." Means adjourn. Boom. I mean, 5 minutes, y'all. That quick. And my heart just dropped. Because I thought, again, not controversial per se, you know, bipartisan support, this is going to pass. But somebody came up there advocating. They probably had a little money too for influence and got those respective chairs to kill the bill. But that's how democracy works, Madam Chair. If we don't make our voices heard, then, you know, some people would say we're complicit in our silence. So I encourage all of you, don't just come up there to talk to me. If there's a bill of interest that's in a certain committee, get in touch with that chair. Set up a meeting with them, email them, call their LA, and continue to hassle them. Don't give up.
What is the LA?
Legislative assistant, like Ms. Loria is for me. Because how long did it take to get Medicaid expansion in North Carolina? 10 years. 10 years. Why? Because people kept advocating. People kept going to those chairs, going to those people, making those phone calls, sending those emails, showing up at those rallies and demonstrations because they knew how important it was. That's the way that's the way it's gonna happen. Because I'm only one voice, but when you all, as a group, can go talk to other people who have a more powerful voice than me because of the virtue of their position as being a chair of a committee, that's how it happens. It's hard for me to get meetings with them sometimes. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to reemphasize what it means as citizens. We do have the power. Now, true, money does influence.
That it
Money
does.
influence when there are no voices being heard, right?
Yes, ma'am.
If people can appreciate that their votes collectively represent more than the money, then they will have. And they should, whether it's a Republican or Democrat, they should go there. Do the very same thing at the federal level. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because whether we have a majority on Democrats or Republicans. Our senators represent the whole state,
Yes, ma'am.
right? In addition to our representatives. And how we can support you is that bills we know that will help everybody. You should not feel that you're the only one advocating for that. We ourselves ought to be supporting you, saying this will help Warren County with the water, or this will help Oxford if they get their money, right?
Right.
It would help the whole county if we got Medicaid, right? We have no hospitals here. You have one in
Halifax County, right.
All of those hospitals are dependent on Medicaid.
They are.
Don't just think that's for poor people now, right? All these nursing homes are dependent on Medicaid.
The majority of the federal funding that we get as a state is Medicaid funding.
Yes.
Yep, 70%, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, millions of people are gonna hurt. So you putting for a bill or others putting, we ought to be saying, yes, we know this is helpful for us. You know, I'm an advocate about people not being hungry. I want to say that schools need lunches, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And they need to have it free for everybody. And senior citizens need to have food.
Yes, ma'am.
So we ought to be advocating for that. We shouldn't have to be only dependent on you. Now, I want you to do your job now, right? And we want
Yes, ma'am.
We want to put pressure on you to keep on doing your job.
Exactly.
And we want to thank you for having this affair. But we
Thank
also
you.
want to say to us, we have a continuous responsibility other than just voting. We have a responsibility to say what's good or what's bad, right? We argue in our homes or to each other. What a lousy job Pierce is doing, right? Well,
I hope not.
Maybe not. Yeah, I'm making that up. But we should also be saying to people, hey, this hurts Warren County. This helps Warren County, right? So don't just leave it to you or to our elected officials to think. We ought to say what is valuable to us. Accountability is a part of being a citizen as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Did anyone else have a question?
Okay. Now, I know it's Pierce's Town Hall, but we're going to Raleigh. The North Carolina Association of County Commissioners has a legislative day, June 10th and 11th. So I will be in Raleigh. And just like when we went to Washington in March, we took letters to our representatives in Washington and we hand-delivered them. And I think they made a difference. If you want to send a letter to Raleigh, to anyone, just get your letter to me by early June. I'm leaving June 10th, be in Raleigh that night till the 11th. And so I will hand deliver letters to whomever you want me to.
Oh, watch yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
So I know.
From one chair to the former chair.
The surplus, which is
Yes,
a
ma'am.
beautiful thing, but you know the way you're making it won't last long. The way it's going now.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Being that Warren County and even your district is in a rural county.
Yes, ma'am.
it's rural counties. I'm often wonder when we have positions for qualified professionals, like for public health nurses, for our
Like we talked about.
department that we
Right,
can't
right.
get filled, as well as
Right.
teachers that
Right.
we can't get filled. Why isn't anybody in the state senate or either in the House proposing giving those rural counties additional monies for those hard to fill positions to incentivize those people to come here?
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. I can tell you that one of the things that they have proposed is, I don't like to say dumbing down, but watering down the standards. So what they were proposing, again, we voted against it, but when it comes to school nurses specifically, they wanted to make it so someone who had, now some of you in here might disagree, but someone who had a 2-year associate degree in nursing and 2 years of experience working in a healthcare setting could go to be a school nurse instead of someone with a 4-year degree. They also want to roll back the licensure requirements for teachers, where you don't have to necessarily get a teaching license. But this is to address those shortages instead of what you say do, just pay more, right? No, we're going to water down the requirements so we can fill these vacancies and we don't have to go into our pockets to pay more. So That's the kind of stuff that they're proposing.
But they have monies for the private school scholarships for people who
They have appropriated over $1 billion for the next 2 fiscal years for opportunity scholarships. Yeah, yeah. And again, I mean, this all goes back to voting, because what you can do if you are a political party, if you get into the majority, you can change how judicial races are conducted. You make them partisan. You get control of the courts, you can run the state. Because now I can gerrymander that district to make it so it stays to one certain political party. And when that lawsuit comes, which is going to come, we can rule against it in court and keep that seat. So that's the longer term gain. And we've seen that there are extremes that certain political parties will go to get a judge seat. We've seen that over the last 6 months, right? So when you say that, Ms. Pierce, I understand where you're coming from. We introduce bills like that, but they don't go anywhere. Where, a district like Warren County Schools, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the school district is the top employer here. Is it still the top employer? For the county? The county, then the school? Okay. But, we introduce bills to try to put more money in there to entice people to stay. But, again, it's a numbers game. If you don't have the numbers to pass the legislation, you won't pass it. And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that's going on now, in terms of what you were talking about, running out of that money, we are approaching what they're calling a fiscal cliff. So if you don't know, we've been giving tax cuts to the wealthy and corporations for over 10 years, right? So why are public schools underfunded? Because somebody ain't paying their fair share, right? And I think they want to get it to 0%. I don't know if it's for personal income tax or corporate tax. They want to get it to 0% by 2027. Personal, right? You might sit out here and say, hey, that ain't bad, Rodney. I'm good with that. How you going to pay for anything? How you going to pay for anything that's public? That's a public good. And then if I privatize it, guess what? I don't have to treat you the same if it's private as opposed to being public. So when we talk about the inefficiency of our state government, all these jobs being cut, just remember who's been funding the state government for the past 10 years. I'm sorry, I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Anyone else on this side before I go to Mrs. Espinoza? Let me go to her. I see you, Mr. Hicks. Excuse me. How we doing on time? Yes, ma'am.
I hear about all the funding, but there's also accountability that comes with funding. And when you constantly, or not constantly, but when you ask for money, and there's no transparency on how it's spent, where it's spent, when you ask for someone to come and check and see if the money's going where it's supposed to go. Because when you constantly hear, oh, we got money for this, we got money for that,
right.
You never see anything surface. I don't mind appropriating money, but I also think there should be somebody set in place to make sure that the money is accounted for where it's supposed to go. I don't know how you guys do that up there.
That's what the auditor's supposed to be for.
Find them.
Well, the state auditor's office, but that's being politicized as well, though, because they're giving the auditor powers that have previously belonged to who? The governor, right? There was a lawsuit about that, right? Governor Stein won the first round, and the other party won the second round, and now you got the state auditor over the what? State Board of what? Elections. Since when? Since when does the state auditor get to pick who's going on the State Board of Elections? And when we were in general government appropriations last week, my colleague, Representative Rubin, he introduced a bill. He said, you're giving the state auditor's office 5 new employees, right? You're giving the State Board of Elections 7 new employees. And guess what? They're exempt, meaning they are political appointees. These are not civil servants. people who got the job and they're serving under whoever is the State Board of Elections director. No, these are political appointees. And when we ask, well, why are you doing that? Well, he needs to be able to put together his own team. But you've never given that power to anyone previously. Why now? Right? So that is the state auditor's job, to make sure that money is spent efficiently. And what he does is every week, whatever institution he audits, he sends state legislators the report. And I'm pretty sure you could probably find that. I know you can find it on the website as well. But that's state institutions, colleges, agencies, stuff like that. I don't know if he does that per se for like local jurisdictions or school boards and stuff like that. Mr. Hicks. Oh, one moment, Ms. May. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yes, sir.
They're considering cutting a lot of jobs, of eliminating some different agencies. So in doing so, what is their motivation for cutting X amount of jobs or agencies? And also in the process, what are their plans to do with the funds that they say that they're going to save?
Right.
And part of my reason for asking that portion is that a lot of times we see agencies who say that we've saved X amount of dollars, but where the money at?
Right, right.
You know, so I'm
Yes,
trying
sir.
to understand what their motivation is for cutting these agencies and eliminating these jobs,
Yes, sir.
and what they're going to do with the proceeds.
Right. I believe they're taking orders from Washington. You know, everything is being done in the name of efficiency, right? And we've heard that word a lot in politics, right? Efficiency. Everything's being done in the name of efficiency. What they're doing with the funds is kind of like twofold. For some employees in agencies that are having other jobs cut, they are giving them a little pay bump. They have, you know, put that in the budget, like, hey, since we're giving them more responsibility, we're going to give them a little pay increase too. What they're also doing, and this goes back to my earlier point about the state auditor and the State Board of Elections, what they're also doing is, if it's an agency they like, or if it's an agency that's headed by someone who belongs to a certain political party, they're going to give that agency more money. They gave the State Board of Elections, which is under the state auditor now, like I said, they gave him 5 more employees in his office alone. They gave the State Board of Elections 7 more employees. And they gave them $1.5 million for future litigation, just in case they get sued. So that's what some of that, in terms of that money you're talking about, that's how some of it is being spent. Or they might just put it in reserves and, you know, hold on to it for a rainy day. But that's something I know that's been done because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen the paperwork and all that. I've read the articles to confirm it. That is what they're doing with some of the money. Some of it they're using to give bumps in salary to people in those same departments, and then they're also moving it over to other agencies. Ms. Lehman. Excuse me.
I think I speak for the board, the district, and thank you for
Yes, ma'am.
your bill that you presented for calendar flexibility for the
Yes, ma'am. I remember our conversation.
And that the state legislates when school can start and when it has to end, except if you are a charter school.
That's right.
And something, a restart school, which is state legislated, is given, what am I trying to say? It's given that same flexibility. So
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have schools that are restart schools, we have an early college school, we have traditional schools, and it is impossible for us to create a calendar that all schools start on the same day. And that is a real problem for some of our families who have kids in, you know, in different schools and in a rural county particularly.
Yes, ma'am.
So maybe at some point, traditional schools will be granted the same flexibility that charter schools are, because it does seem to be fairly inequitable.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you for your effort.
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. And let it be said that Mr. Pierce is not against you educating your child how you see fit, okay? Don't have any problem with someone homeschooling their child, sending them to a private school, sending them to a charter school or traditional public school. I have my positions against the laws that govern some of those entities. If you are a school that takes public funding, I believe you should be accountable to the public and let us know publicly how you are spending that money. So when private schools get that voucher money, I believe that it is only fair and just that if you're taking public money, that you let the public know how it's being spent, right? Private schools do not have to have licensed teachers. They do not have to provide food or transportation to their students. I believe the only person that has to be licensed in a private school by law is the principal. They don't have to perform background checks on employees. And I just think that's not fiscally responsible or sound to give institutions that don't have that type of accountability public money. I represent charter schools, KIPP Halifax, KIPP GCP, the tribal school up here, as well as Hobgood Charter School. So again, don't let it be said that I'm against this or that. I'm against the laws that govern some of those institutions. I just want to go on the record and be clear with that, particularly because of my background as an educator. But getting to your point, Madam Chair, they are proposing in the House budget to give the Charter School Review Board basically all of the power to oversee charter schools. You know, in the past, the state board and the state superintendent still had some say. They're trying to get rid of that altogether and give that all to the Charter School Review Board. I can't remember all the specifics, but I remember reading about that. And if you're going to call yourself a public school, then the entity that oversees all of the public schools in the State Board of Education, I believe they still should have some say-so in how you conduct your business. Anyone else? Hey, how you doing? Mr. Kearney. I'm sorry, Reverend Kearney, my mistake. Let me call you by your title.
I just want to thank you.
We got about 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you for what you're doing in Raleigh and for the information shared. I feel so
Yes, sir.
challenged now. My work is all about community engagement.
Yes, sir.
And as we said, we have the power. We have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm challenged now. How do I do what I do even a better way to help engage our community, to be informed and react in these times? So again, thanks for these facts, this information. And
Yes, sir.
I'm really challenged tonight, and I'm going to look at new ways of doing what I do in a better way to engage more folks.
Yes, sir. And thank you for what you do. Yes, sir. I can only talk from my own personal experience. I didn't start well, I was always kind of interested in politics, but I really didn't get deeper into it until I got into the teaching profession, because I found out that state law or the state legislature has a lot more to do with public education in North Carolina than the federal legislature. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but I didn't know. And so I started doing the research. I started finding out, okay, well, I know who is who the county commissioners are. I know who the school board is, but let me learn more about my state representative, my state senator, my member of Congress, right? Who are the chairs of these committees that overlook public education? Who has the final say-so? The state board. Okay, who's on the state board? How do they get on the state board? And it took a long time to fully educate myself on those things where I felt comfortable enough to start speaking out on them. Then once I started speaking out, it's easy, very easy, to sit on the sidelines and throw stones. Blah, 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 you ain't doing this. That's easy. That's real easy. But jump into the fray for my fellow elected and appointed officials in here, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Jump into the fray. Jump into the fray. And I don't mean necessarily run for office, but become an even more powerful advocate. Don't advocate just from behind your computer screen. Go to Raleigh, go to DC, make those phone calls, send those letters, send those emails, hold us accountable. That's the way it works. And please, vote. Vote. And if you know people who aren't registered who are eligible, register them to vote. Get them a ride to the poll. Because there have been bills introduced that you haven't seen that I didn't talk about, where they want to reduce early voting to what, Ms. Loria? 1 week? Early voting is usually what, about 2.5 weeks? There have been bills introduced, they wanted to reduce it to 1 week. 1 week for you to early vote. They want to take away a woman's outright right to have autonomy over her body away from her completely. These are bills that were introduced. Like I said, they didn't get any traction, but imagine if the Speaker of the House, and I don't think Speaker Hall would do it, or if Mr. Bell, John Bell, who's the Rules Chair, you know what, that's a good idea. Let's put it to a vote. Imagine if that happened. And please don't believe that it can't. Because there are a lot of things that have passed in the last several years we thought would never happen, would never become law. And guess what? Now it's law. And some of that responsibility falls on us because we may not have done our part. So, to echo Mr. Kearney, please get involved. We send out a newsletter every month. It's not extensive, but it lets you know what's going on in Raleigh and what I'm doing. Please feel free to email, call our office, send letters. We pride ourselves on constituent servicing. That's what we try to do a good job of doing. Thank you all for letting me have Miss Loria up there with me. She represents you very well here in Warren County. I mean, it's something when your LA actually lives in your district, you know. And then she has the background that she has in county government, so she can help me understand things that I don't necessarily understand. And every now and then we got to do what, Ms. Lori? We got to close that door and have a real talk. We don't need nobody walking around and hearing what we're talking about, right? But if there are no other questions, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out tonight. God bless you. Please drive home safe.